What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the E-Commerce Influence Podcast. My name is Austin Brawner.
And I am Andrew Foxwell, and it is always good to be with you, my friend, discussing today the 5 myths of e-commerce entrepreneurship. I wonder what sparked this episode for you. Where did this come from?
This episode came from just thinking about things that I hear, things that kind of pop up that I'm like, oh, this doesn't sound right to me. Or, just being in the industry for a while, there are ideas that I have that aren't necessarily matched up with the popular dialogue that's happening right now. But first, before we go into that, I want to do a little check on the 0 to 100%. How deep are you? How dead are you right now from exhaustion from newborn?
Yeah, I'm a little tired. Percentage-wise, hard to say. I would say I'm running at probably about 30% right now in terms of energy. But it's okay. I mean, it's like, it is sort of like what it is. There's the meditation book I have that's called Wherever You Go, There You Are. Which is basically, that's where we're at. Like, this is where we're at right now.
And I feel like that's a great metaphor for our life right now.
Yeah. It's like, okay, well, you're stuck in quarantine. Like, that's where you are. She's, it helps that she's super cute. It's hard, that she's crying and fussing, and it's like you want her to sleep, for her to be, feeling a little bit better. But she's fine. She's doing good. She's doing good. We're going to get there. We're going to get over the hump. Yeah. It's just kind of a challenging climb right now, but it's all good.
And, right now during the quarantine, no haircuts. So you got the Green Bay Packers hat.
Got the hat on. Boom. Wearing a lot of hats. My hair looks really weird.
We're all dealing with it.
I don't think anybody cares, but I've been trying to wear my sports hats because sports are obviously non-existent currently. So I'm trying to be like sports, like, hey, sports are great.
You're holding it down.
I miss them. Yeah. It feels weird to go through the spring and not watch the Masters and all that. It's just like, it's an odd feeling.
Is it really the spring? That's the question I ask,
Yeah. A cancellation unlike any other is what I said about the Masters.
Well, we'll dive in. Today, like Andrew said, we're going to be talking about the 5 myths of e-commerce entrepreneurship. These include some hot takes about crushing it and crush it culture, scaling, traffic diversification, VC-backed brands, and more.
Yeah, I think we're going to talk about it, and we kind of went through the notes of going through this episode because I think that, we get sick of this stuff being propagated in our space, right? That's just this like super myths that we all hear. And there's very rarely content that talks about the myths and calls them out. So, we're going to give you some practical tips today. This is for anyone who makes your living growing an e-commerce business. Agency owner, consultants, marketers, business owners, obviously. So that's, if you own an e-commerce business or you're intimately involved with one, this episode's for you.
Yep. And I can kick it off with myth number 1.
Let's do it.
Which is, to grow, all I need to do is just work harder and keep crushing it. Now, that is something I hear a lot. Like, it just, if I keep crushing it, keep working harder, we're going to continue to grow. The reality that I've seen is that the top founders that I know, yes, they work hard, but number 1, they protect themselves from burnout. And if you're listening to this podcast right now and you feel stuck and you're not growing, chances are it's because you're doing too much, not too little.
Yeah, I mean, this is really interesting. We all want to try to do. We all are, let's say, on social media. We're all talking to colleagues, and we feel like they're always doing more. And I think that this is something we've thematically brought up a lot in this podcast. But it is truly the differentiator. I think for a lot of businesses of. I remember Andrew Darian polled over 400 seven-figure store owners, and the consensus was that time management was the number 1 struggle that everyone had. And we all feel that, and you always feel like you need to do more. And it's sort of like going back to the interview we had with Greg McEwen of, it's not more, it's less but better. And that's really what we want to be focusing on. So if you're not focusing on time as you grow or as you run your business, I think that you truly are just sort of always going to be feeling like you're grinding the gears and a little bit behind, which is a tough place to be.
And everyone's going to feel a little bit behind, and everyone's going to feel like, there's too much to do. What I think it's important to really like key in on is that the defining factor for success and growth is not working hard. That is not the defining factor. It is coming up and really focusing on what you are doing and nailing in on your focus on the most important thing and something that actually moves the needle, right? Like my fastest growing clients, they're not doing all the channels. They're doing like one channel really, really, really well, and one marketing message really, really, really well. As they grow and get bigger, like massively bigger, they're going to have to evolve a little bit, but that does not hold people back. And really, it actually doing less has allowed them to move much, much faster. And that's my take on it.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, you say that, and we'll go into the second one because it ties into it. But for me, it's really fascinating when you take and you ask business owners whenever we start working with a new partner. We're always like, what's the number one thing that you want to accomplish? Like, what's actually something that's truly going to move the needle for you? And when you dig in, a lot of the times it's actually time. It's finances is like one of it, like selling more, but a lot of it is if I had more focused time on X. So a lot of it is like schedule and how do we help you grow your business with Facebook and Instagram ads to give you more of your time back, which goes into the second myth.
Myth number 2,
which is to grow, you need to diversify your traffic. Everyone's like, well, you're starting to grow. You need to be everywhere. And the reality, you only really need like 2 channels to scale, in my opinion.
100%.
In your opinion. So why don't you go into this a little bit and why we think that's the case?
So my fastest growing clients, they don't typically diversify their traffic until they have to, right? The top founders that I know have picked a channel and become an expert in that channel. Let's give some examples here. So like movement watches, Jake Kassan became an expert in Facebook ads, was running them himself, initially learned everything about it, then outsourced it. Mm-hmm. You look at like Tough to Needle, they killed it on AdWords, Dr. Axe, SEO and content marketing. For a long time, like Away marketing was Away suitcases, which they're getting killed right now. But they were crushing it with affiliates. They were just everywhere. You could not search without finding some affiliate talking about Away. Mm-hmm. And they find a channel and they really like dominate that channel because that's what matters right now. Being the best is the only thing that matters on these channels. Like the top 1% get so many more results than everybody else. And so it makes a lot more sense to be the best at one thing than okay at a bunch of different things.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's focusing on that. You go back to the episode where we interviewed Matt from Shelley Cove, which is from maybe 6 months ago. And Matt, I got to know him because he became an expert at Facebook advertising. At Facebook and Instagram advertising, like he became obsessed with it. You look at someone
obsessed.
Like Helen from Serial School and Dylan and her husband and business partner, right? Like they became experts on Facebook and Instagram ads. And obviously there's the other examples you're talking about here of like Four Sigmatic with podcasting, et cetera. But that is something that it requires. And if you can do that, you will be like so much farther ahead. I mean, who is it? Nat Eliason that talks about that the top 1% get all the results in the space. So the top result in Google gets 10 times the traffic than the results further down the page. So it's like, if you focus on that one thing, that's like a major differentiator.
Yes.
And so if you're not an expert, become one.
Again, like we say that, but it's easier said than done.
Oh,
but
absolutely.
It is possible, and like it's almost a requirement. Like you're going to learn. I don't care if you own a business and own a brand and you came up with a product. Even if you're a product developer and that's what you love to do, you're going to have to learn how to drive traffic. You're going to have to do it.
Yes.
It's really freaking hard if that's not your mindset, but you're going to have to do it because it's going to have incredible benefits for you. And the questions I ask myself is like, is the business demand capture or demand generation? And if it's demand capture, meaning like, you know, the best example is like auto parts. You're not going to buy an auto part unless you need it. Then become an expert in demand capture. If it's a new, wildly cool product no one's ever seen before, you got to become an expert in demand generation, like Facebook and Instagram ads. And that's listening to episodes with Andrew, going deep into it, taking courses. It's reaching out, getting into mastermind groups. It's, you know, all the stuff that you can do to become an expert. You got to do it because it's going to pay off massively down the road.
Well, the other interesting thing to say about that is that, you and I, because of this podcast, are lucky enough to serve as like the tip of the iceberg, or almost a air traffic controller for a lot of people that are new into the space, right? They're like, you know, hey, landing in this airstrip, whatever. I'm doing a lot of hand movements. It's like, I like that a lot because people come to us and say, hey, I'm trying to, exactly. I'm trying to figure out this channel and this is, where do I start, right? And I think you and I pride ourselves on having a landscape of like, okay, here's a genuine person you can contact that's going to really help you understand this. And so again, going back to that second myth, you don't need to diversify necessarily to scale. You need really only 2 channels in many cases. Let's get to myth number 3, which is one of my personal favorites, that you need to be up on the new stuff. I love doing air quotes. It's my favorite.
Oh, it's fantastic.
Up on the new stuff. And the reality is, like, marketing tactics or the nitty gritty of it, it's not the answer.
No, it's not. You don't need more marketing tactics. If you're listening to this podcast, you already have too many in your mind. Because you know what? If you're listening to this podcast, you're somebody who goes out and is proactive about learning, and you're somebody who's going to be out finding information and bringing it in and transferring it to your business. The biggest thing I see businesses trying to do is just doing more than they're capable of. I'm guilty of it. It's very, very hard because it's alluring to put more on your plate than to put less on your plate, right? It's like at a buffet, right? People load up on all this stuff. But if you have like 3 people in your company, going to a marketing conference can be very, very dangerous because you can come back with all these ideas and overload yourself and not do any of them. There's a great quote. It's management is doing things right. Leadership is doing the right things. When it comes to marketing tactics, all that matters is you do the right things at the right time. And that can be hard to figure out, but most of the time it doesn't, doing more isn't the answer, like what we said earlier. I'll tell this story. I've told this story before, but I thought it was a really interesting example of how to use a marketing conference well. There's this guy named Carl White I met like years ago, just briefly, and he was at this marketing conference at Traffic and Conversion, which is like the ultimate shiny object syndrome conference, right? Like a million shiny objects, all these marketers trying to attract you with all these ideas and things that are killing it for them. So he would go to this, listen, and then once he found his one idea he was going to implement, he'd just pack up his bag and leave the conference. And that's it. It was done.
That's it.
And
one idea. That's all he's looking for.
That's all he needs. One idea. He's like, once I get my one idea, I'm out because I don't want to confuse myself. The guy lives a crazy life. I think he does 10 days of Harley riding, 10 days of work. 10 days of Harley riding, 10 days of work. It's like, that's freaking awesome.
Yeah, I think what's fascinating about that to me is something that I have thought a lot about, and certainly marketers fall, for those of us in the e-commerce space, fall victim to, is you even when you hear about tactics or you hear about these things like, oh, you should try this or you should try that. Whenever I've like really gone into it. So I'll look into their case studies or I'll talk to the companies that have worked with them or, I'll try it myself. It's almost never what it's sold as. And it's almost always harder. And it's almost like always more of a waste of time. And like an example, let's just take SMS marketing, for example. Okay. I think SMS marketing has a lot of validity, right? And I think there's options there, right? Okay. But the reality is SMS marketing is just like email. It's just like anything else really, but it's more similar to email where you get out of it what you put into it. And you can't just like deploy an SMS strategy like in a weekend. Like this requires multiple week, month planning, in my opinion, even for a smaller company, because of the nuance of doing it right. And otherwise you're going to hurt your brand. And so that's one of those things of like, is it impactful? Yes. And I think that's a high example. I mean, that's not like a worthless example. SMS marketing can be helpful to you, but it requires so much. And so being up on all of this, if you take SMS marketing and take that example out into other places, I think that one project's going to take you a lot of time, because you're probably not running a massive company. Maybe you are running a massive company. Even if you are, that's going to be one person's job for a long time, one FTE, So my point is like, you don't need to be always up on the new stuff, as we've said. Try to focus on only one thing if you can. And as Austin said, leadership is doing the right things, not feeling obligated that you have to do everything.
I want to jump on that one because I had an interesting experience this week. I had a former client from like years ago. They reached back out and they were like, "Hey, can you hop on a call?" And they're killing it right now. Like their business is booming, and they're like, "We wanted to figure out what you would do to kind of dive into some of this opportunity that we have right now." And I was like, okay, well, I think after talking to them, I was like, what I would do was I would take an entire day and sit down and create a strategy to dive into this opportunity, right? Like a long-term strategy. And they're like, no, we can't do that. We don't have time to do that. We just want to know quick wins we can do right now.
Oh yeah, sure. I mean, it's logical. It makes sense.
And they're like, so what would you do? What are your quick wins right now? And I was like, the quick win I would do right now would be to hire me for one day so we could sit in a room and map out what the quick wins are. It doesn't happen in 15 minutes, right? Like it's at the bare minimum. The bare minimum is one day of thinking, structured, like walking through all the, like you don't have success on Facebook ads from just trying Facebook ads. It doesn't work like that.
Right. Well, let's get to the fourth myth of if I follow big brands, I'll learn what works. And the idea that the bigger the company is, the more sophisticated that their tactics are.
Yes.
And the reality is context is more important than content. And I think Austin said it perfectly when he said most of the stories you hear about fast-growing e-commerce brands don't apply to you. And I think that is so true. I mean, how many times have we sat down with someone and maybe you sat down yourself and you say, I tried to apply a tactic I've heard about from a big company to what I am doing, and it just doesn't work. You talked about, Austin, multi-touch video Facebook ads funnel. So you have them watch one video and then they complete that video, and then you have them watch another video because they watched that video. And it's
let's dive into that, right? Like when I say big brands, what I'm talking about is like the large brands out there that are like have a lot of press, and then also success stories from conferences, right? Even if something works from like a famous store in our space, that doesn't mean it's going to work for you. I've tried multi-touch like video Facebook ads. I've never had success. I've actually like rarely heard there's only a few companies I've ever heard have had success with it.
Right.
And I made this same mistake with referral marketing for a couple of clients, like right at the beginning in my career. It like worked really well for the first client, and I was like, oh, this is going to work for everybody.
Sure.
Didn't work.
No dice.
For everybody. Yeah. And more than anything, it's like trying to figure out what is going to work for you. And often I see people spending like really good money chasing bad money. Like they are chasing marketing case studies, and they make all their profits from one channel, and they spend all their profits on other channels that don't work. And that just sucks. And also you have to remember that every time you go to a conference, you're listening often to people from agencies who have a very vested interest in selling you their services. Mm-hmm. And so these case studies are just slivers. They're slices of how things actually work. And they don't go into the fact that it might have taken a year and a half to get to the success that they're at of working on it every single day.
I think the biggest thing is what you said, context is more important than content. I mean, context is so huge as it relates to all this. And I think that, you look at VC-backed brands, which a lot of us, you take a page out of their book and you look at what they're doing. But, I found out there's a veggie delivery service that's well known in the United States, random, I know, I had heard that was doing really well. Well, I find out that they're paying on a CPA basis, saying they're doing really well. They're paying $310. It's just so yes, you can take what they're doing, and they're talking about, from a tactical standpoint, they were talking about consolidated ad set structure, which again, there's opportunity there, but
yeah,
you just have to actually think about it. And then you said agencies have a vested interest in selling you their services and making you feel sometimes. The good ones will make you understand this is actually what we're going to do, and we're going to try this. And if it doesn't work, we're going to pull it off of the retainer, right? When other ones will say, we're going to do, if an agency tries to do, in my opinion, out of the gates for you, more than 3 things or even 2 things, be careful, because it's almost where it's a shiny object thing with them as well, right? And
Yep.
They're trying to distract you. But if they say, look, we're going to do Facebook and Instagram and email, that's a huge one, or AdWords and email. Right, that's a big one. So if the trends don't work, what does work? And I think, Austin, you said, drive more traffic, right? Just get more people to the site. Increasing your average order value works. That's a tactic that works. Increasing your lifetime value works. And growing your email list works. Launching new product and pulling new ideas from other industries, and then using a dashboard to track all of that relentlessly. Those are things that, if you look thematically across what actually works, we can say, hey, this is good stuff, and actually will move the needle for your business.
Yes, that's what I focus on with clients, and that's what I find to be evergreen and durable, if that makes sense. Because most of it's not going to be right for your business. It just because it's worked for somebody else does not mean it's going to translate. And we're seeing, as a lot of these companies go public, these VC-backed companies go public, and they file their S1s, and you look at their marketing spend versus revenue,
yeah, right.
Marketing spend versus it's okay, no wonder I've been seeing them everywhere. I read some headline. It was Casper would have been better if they just cut a hole in their mattress, put $200 in it, and left it on the street or something like that. That would be a better use of marketing.
Yeah, true.
I think it was a ridiculous headline, but yeah, it was basically the amount that they spent. We'll move on to myth number 5, though. Myth number 5 is that top founders have a clear vision and know what they're doing from the beginning. The reality that I see is that the best founders I know, they ask for a lot of help and they invest in themselves. I think that most people have a really terrible idea of what a mentor looks like. And I think back to myself, and you can speak to your experience, but every breakthrough I have ever made has been kind of tracked back to conversations with people who are just a little bit ahead of me, right? The right amount ahead of me. Mm-hmm. That's what's helped me. It's getting these conversations, and I don't know, how do you feel about that when you think about breakthroughs? Where do they come from for you?
I mean, I've so clear vision from the beginning. There's this impossible. I think what Gracie and I do well, I think, is we trust in ourselves that we understand the current landscape, as of current meaning today, because in Facebook and Instagram, that's really what it is. And to me, the mentors that we have that have helped us to invest in ourselves and ask for help and sort of refine our vision One is a guy that built an agency in the 90s and sold it in the early 2000s. And another guy is an angel private equity guy who has bought and sold about 20 companies with his partner in Chicago. And they're mostly in manufacturing auto parts space. and so that's like, those are my two mentors. And I think like from a business standpoint, that's what they have taught me is, the lessons of communication, etc. I mean, the stuff that we all know. And I think what we look to is we look to the loudest people in the industry sometimes, or in our specific niche. And you're going to say, okay, well, they must know what's going on. When in reality, to me personally, I feel like, it's more of getting out of the house, sitting down, having a quality relationship that's a friendship first, that then is over time a text message or an email. And, it's more checking in like that versus like going to, people that are big celebrities in the industry. I just feel like getting out of your own head and getting out of the industry is helpful too, because it gives you a better vision. So yeah, no one has a vision from the beginning. And I think people that tell you like, oh, this is what we intended to do, that might be true to some degree, but I think it's fairly rare. If what you have 5 years after you've launched is what you started with.
Well, I guess I want to be more clear on that. I think that vision, when I say clear vision, I think that oftentimes they'll have an idea of the end goal, but not like all the stuff that needs to be done, like on the way there. Like I don't find that people that have had a lot of success are like that much. They're like, oh, they're geniuses. They just have figured this thing out and they knew how to get there from the beginning. No, like there's an end goal in mind, but like no idea how to get there. And that's where asking for help and investing in themselves is super important.
Sure.
And I look at like inspiration for just like different projects that I've done, and they've always come from mastermind groups or from a business coach. Idea for the coalition came from my business coach, and sitting around a mastermind for a weekend, I got an idea for running the intensives. So for me, what I see is that investing in your education is like the best thing you can do. Joining the coalition, Andrew's courses, those are great places that you can get help. And then you make sure that you're reaching out to people and build your network, right? Like, and that can be through Twitter, it can be through email. All these types of things are just like great ways to start connecting with people.
Yeah, I agree. I think I appreciate your clarification there on clear vision. So let's summarize. I think, stop grinding and hustling is number one. Number two is don't feel that you need to diversify your traffic. Number three, too early. Avoid the shiny objects. Number four, ignore the gurus and sort of unicorns. And number five, invest in the coaching and truly build relationships. Austin, I've really enjoyed this episode, man. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, and if you guys like this episode, I go way more in depth on these 5 myths of e-commerce entrepreneurship in a monthly training in the coalition, where we talk about the path to 7 figures, how to build, grow, and scale your business. And we go deep into this and talk about some specific examples. We do a monthly training every month, so you can go check that out at brandgrowthexperts.com. Go to the coalition or just join thecoalition.com. We'll talk to you guys soon. Let us know how you think about this video episode, if we should keep doing them. We're going to be posting it on YouTube. Give us a comment.
We'd love to
subscribe. Smash that like button.
Smash that like button. Slide into our DMs. All right. Thank you.